Hi, this is Yolanda O'Bannon with yowangdu.com, and I wanted to share with you today some of the results of the research that we did about the Tibet train, the train that goes from parts of China into Lhasa. And the mistake that is very commonly made about this train, which is people thinking that it's a great way to acclimatize to Lhasa's altitude. You probably know that Lhasa's altitude is almost 12,000 feet. It seems like it should make sense that if you start at almost sea level in Beijing or Shanghai, that you would, and 2 days later you end up in Lhasa, that you would be very gradually acclimatizing for those 2 days. But unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way. And it turns out that the first almost full day is spent at altitudes that are too low to help you acclimatize to Lhasa. And then for the last part of the journey, 10 or maybe 15 hours, you're actually at altitudes that are higher than Lhasa, so also not of benefit to help you acclimatize there. And again, it seems like possibly that it might make sense that it would be good for you to be at altitudes higher than Lhasa so that when you get to Lhasa, you'll be in better shape, but that doesn't work either. The real key to acclimatization is to ascend quite slowly. After 10,000 feet, you're not supposed to go over 1,000 feet a day, and for every 3,000 feet over 10,000, you're supposed to actually rest for an entire day. The fact that the train is traveling too high, too fast, is obviously a problem in terms of acclimatization, but there's a second kind of side problem is that the trains, or some of the trains, pass through the highest part of the journey during the second night of the trip, meaning that people are trying to sleep during some of these really high altitudes. So a very common symptom of the beginning stages of altitude sickness is sleeplessness. So many people have trouble sleeping on the train and are basically exhausted by the time they get to Lhasa and are trying to acclimatize to Lhasa's altitude. And there are two systems by which the train delivers oxygen to the passengers. One is that extra oxygen is simply pumped into all of the train cars after a certain altitude, and the other is nose pieces with tubes are provided for individuals to get extra oxygen as well. But what's interesting is that the oxygen that's pumped into the cars when they reach this certain altitude, basically, because the train is traveling at altitudes higher than Lhasa most of that time, bring you basically to altitudes that are more or less equivalent to Lhasa. And what that means is that a lot of people on the train experience altitude sickness. So this doesn't mean at all that you shouldn't take the train to Lhasa. It's just that you shouldn't take the train to Lhasa if you think that it's going to be a great way to acclimatize to Lhasa, because there are obviously some issues with it. And there are also some alternatives, which many travel agents and other people with experience on this route recommend. The two most popular ones is that one, you should just go directly to Xining, because that's where your good acclimatization starts in terms of the train. It is actually a benefit to stay there a couple of days to acclimatize. And the bad news about Xining is I've never been to Xining, but I understand that it's not a really wonderful place to hang out. It's become clear that the acclimatization is not really the greatest reason to take the train, but the real reason to take the train is the views. And the best views, by all accounts, are between Golmud and Lhasa. And so if you take the right train, and you have to research to make sure that you have the most daylight hours between Golmud and Lhasa. And so basically another good option for many people is just to take the airplane to Lhasa and then take the train out of Lhasa. One of the reasons for that is that it's easier almost all the time to get the train from Lhasa to somewhere in China than from somewhere in China into Lhasa. Another reason is that some people do arrive more tired, exhausted from the train journey itself than they would have been if they were just in good shape somewhere and flew right into Lhasa and hit their kind of altitude sickness symptoms then. Now, this is something I have done myself, flown directly into Lhasa. The first time I did it without any altitude medicines, and it did not feel good, or it felt pretty bad for about 2 days, I would say. And the first day we just really laid around and didn't do much of anything. Had a headache, felt kind of just weak and tired, and had a really sleepless night. The second time I used altitude medicine on the advice of my doctor, which I encourage you to do if you think about this, called Diamox. And that one actually helped me, and I felt better faster. But the bottom line is that you would just need to kind of not do much and certainly not go to any higher altitude for at least 3 to 4 days, in my experience. For myself, after having done this research, I think that I would, again, if I don't have much time, I'll take the flights to Lhasa and take the train out when I'm already acclimatized, just to see the views on the train. Or if I do have a lot of time, I would fly to Xining, spend a couple of days at Xining, and then just use Xining as a base to explore the Amdo area, and then get really kind of quite good and acclimatized there, and then take the train in. If you'd like some more specific information, we have some kind of graphs and charts and a little more detailed information at a blog post on yowangdu.com about this, and we welcome you there for information about Tibetan food and travel, and some about Tibetan Buddhism as well. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found this useful, and we'll see you again soon.